One-Day Farm in Dorset, Vermont, and I'm also a freelance writer up there, so I write for Vermont Magazine and Edible Green Mountains. So my husband Ned is still here, so we're doing this kind of New York, Vermont crazy back and forth thing, so it's somehow working out and making it up month by month, but that's sort of what I do. Michelle Carlin, you all know through admissions. Patrick said we had about 2 hours to talk to you guys about the garden, so I think we should just begin to cover it by then. And afterwards, we're all going to get out and do a little work together. So, I don't even, what do I have here? Jeff Powell has seen this presentation. Jeff is the, what's your role with Culinart?
I'm the Assistant Vice President for Culinart for the Education Division.
And last year, Jeff and Mark Barone asked me to present what we do with our gardens and greenhouses at TP to a big event down at Columbia University. So last May, the three of us went down and I put together this presentation. So we're going to kind of key off of that, give you some visuals, give you some backstories. Along the way, this is a total conversation free form. Stop me, ask a question. First of all, as I'm seeing different faces, raise your hand if your son has been involved somehow through the gardens and greenhouses. That was so cool to see that. That's great. Where do I even begin? I guess, let's see what here. Gamage Gardens and Culinart, a collaboration that works. About 4 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, I was very interested in I could have all these fancy degrees and do all these other things, and I realized I didn't know how to grow anything. I knew nothing about growing vegetables, nothing about farming, whatever, and I thought that was pretty lame. So I set out to learn. And along the way, it's fun when you're at TP and you want to learn with students. So I realized we had this beautiful little glass annex off the biology room that was sitting unused, and so in the middle of the winter, we started seeding. You know, and I told the kids, I said, I'm learning this alongside you. So we started seeding flats of greens and little vegetables in the greenhouse, that little tiny greenhouse off the bio room, and stuff started growing. So, are these coming out? Yeah, yeah. So this is just what some of the things we had started in the greenhouse. That's a bunch of chards and kales and mesclun mix. And it was really great. We're like, wow, this is really cool. Then we're like, whoa, we have nowhere to put these things now. So then you harvested them, and I've never seen kids get so excited about salad. That was, you know, we just, I mean, they're like, woohoo! You know, it was just simple salad greens, little balsamic, little olive oil. And again, the kids were very interested in what was going on. And food always entices boys. We also, along the way, started doing some cooking demonstrations with courtesy, again, of Mark Barone, was very helpful. After dinner one night a few years ago, I did a ground beef taste testing of like basic supermarket stuff, a kind of fancy organic stuff, and then another all-natural ground beef. And again, even though the boys had just finished their dinner, they were like, woo! They were digging in. So we're just doing very simple taste testings. And that was really happy-looking kids. They're like, we like that beef. There we were cooking up kale chips. So we were growing stuff. We were trying to show the kids very quickly on easy ways to cook. Different types of carrots, how to make kale chips at home, and they were really, really, I love that guy's face. He's like, get me more kale. So another time, one other evening after dinner, we did making pesto. So I brought a bunch of tomatoes down from the farm or from farmers markets here and made some pesto with basil that we were growing out in the gardens, and there's Mark Barone behind me helping out a ton. So food speaks to boys. This was a milk testing. Our dining hall serves Hudson Valley fresh milk, which was really nice. It was a great decision that the school decided to invest in that company. So we had Sam Simon, Dr. Sam Simon, who's the owner and the head of Hudson Valley Fresh. He came and he spoke to the kids after dinner one night, and we were just doing milk testing. So that was their version of Got Milk. So going back to about 4 years ago, so we had all that greenhouse filled with all these nice little plants, and we said, what do we do? So the first day of spring vacation, the kids all went home on Friday. These kids of volunteers stayed and helped me build our first set of raised beds. This is all donated lumber. I found some great business up the road who was able to donate me lumber. This was composted soil that we had sort of earned through working at Cascade Farm, or what is now the farm at Holmes. So I brought my students over there to work and volunteer, and in exchange he hooked us up with just, you know, yards and yards of free soil. So that's also part of the barter trade thing. So we're building this rudimentary raised bed. Nothing's dug in the ground. It's completely on the surface of the ground, more of an experiment to see what happens. There we are. That was back in the days when you really had to be very precise, like measure it. Now it's like throw it in there. So this is another friend, Ashley Frost, who helped me do all this early on. So we're transplanting Swiss chard, those little plugs you've seen before. And then we threw some plastic over and made the world's tiniest little low tunnel. And it was really cute to come across and look. It was right next to the hockey rink, so everybody's like, "Oh, it looks like the hockey rink had a baby." so we just kind of put it there, sprayed and prayed, went away, and and then that was in early June. That was the harvest that came out of that. And this is completely like by the seat of our pants. Seed of our pants. Right. And then we liked it, so we just kind of kept building more and more of these little tunnels, these little low beds along the way, which right now they're still there. I need to re-up them, but and it worked, and I was astounded at how much product we got out of this. So then what do you do with this product? And it's June, school's done, dining hall's not taken anymore. So then I decided, one of my students, who was my right-hand man, Alex Ross on this, he and I decided to get a stand at the Pauling Farmers Market. And lo and behold, I don't know what picture's next. That's later on. Lo and behold, Alex and I started selling our wares out of just that one long bed at the Pauling Farmers Market. And people loved it. They thought it was great that the students were there helping and so forth. And it was really cool. And not being content with that, I said, well, that was good. Let's go build a really huge greenhouse. All right, so we built, this is what the structure that's now behind the dining hall. Again, no idea what I'm doing. This is pure volunteer. It's just faculty and friends and students. And I picked the swampiest spot on campus, I think, to build it. At that point, nothing was going on behind the dining hall. Those houses up there, nothing. It was just like, me and the deer back there. And we built this full professional 26 by 48 greenhouse. The school did not pay for this. I'm stubborn enough. I didn't want this to be school funded. So I went out and I found some private funding through some alums and through some parents, and they were like, "This is great. We love this. So go for it." So we built this gorgeous greenhouse over the course of the summer. And we had work parties in the summer. We had faculty involved. Mark Berkhold, Michelle Carlin were very instrumental. Students would come in at the end of their day. I would make these work parties, and we would just build this thing. It was probably the hardest thing I've ever done. There were times you're almost in tears of frustration, like, I don't know what I'm doing, but we just muscled through and got it done. And there we are at the end of August, or early August, putting the plastic on. Arch Smith, he said, "That's great, but just make it look good and make sure it's done by my daughter's wedding," who was getting married out in the field. And there we're like, all right, so it was like, like literally like midnight the night before she was married. We're like putting the plastic on, making it all sit there. We're like, looks good, doesn't it? But we did a really neat job. And there's a very happy crew. One worked, and again, a bunch of local kids and TP boys. It was amazing. Then again, we built these boards, these greenhouse beds we built were with lumber that we milled over at Cascade Farm / the farm at Holmes. We'd have this long-term relationship working with them, and then they would give us materials back. And it's just this whole thing I love about trade barter. So there we are in August or September, planting out more chards, and that's what the inside of. If you went down there today, it looks awful. It looks like the end of the winter. But when it's going, we have 8 beds. 8 beds in there. We have 8 beds growing in there, and again, all organic, no spray, all compost that we've either made here or I've made and brought down from Vermont. What we do with this during the year is we have some kids who volunteer and use as their sport, and they harvest the greens, and that goes into the dining hall. And Mark Barone is amazing putting up signs, greens harvested from Gamage Gardens. So we've got kales, chard, arugula, all sorts of mesclun greens. We grow beets, carrots, tomatoes later on in the season, and then we also have some outdoor beds. And again, nothing's dug in. This is all above raised beds. Onions, garlic,
carrots.
Yep.
Brussels sprouts.
Broccoli,
cabbage.
Yep. And then the first summer was great, and then all of a sudden the deer were like, "Whoa, free lunch down there." So then it became like fortification against the deer. So it's constantly evolves. Teaching the boys to harvest. And it's harder than you think. You guys harvested greens? Because people, if you don't teach them, they go, and you're like, oh my God, they just mowed it down and I lost an entire crop. I'm like, no, you kind of got to do it so you take the big leaves and you leave the middle core. So you're teaching these guys a lot of skills. I mean, he's really selected his green. I like that. There was varsity gardening last spring. Lorraine's son Adam is right there holding the pitchfork. But these guys were really, really great. And they were pretty proud because they could see the results of their work. There's one harvest. I've got spinach, kales, mesclun, and the most amazing carrots. And quite honestly, that was last March. So this greenhouse last year was just growing throughout the winter because it could be freezing cold, but in the greenhouse, it's passive solar, 60 degrees. So it was pretty cool. That was the first summer of farmers market. And the guy, this one here, Alex Ross, he was my, my spiritual guru of that. And amazingly enough, through his work with me, then he went to University of Vermont, and now he's helping run their garden up there, their farm up there. And he's just like, I never would have done this if I hadn't gotten this exposure. So it's like, and that was one time, that was a harvest dinner we had from just stuff we'd harvested. These are a bunch of the boys who'd worked on the Greenhouse Gardens program over the year. It was kind of a celebration dinner. Then from there, this is about 2 or 3 years ago, an environmental class wanted to work with me, and I challenged them to develop a compost structure. I knew what I wanted them to make, but I pretended I didn't, so I had them do all the research, and they came up with different structures, and lo and behold, they ended up on the right decision. That's made of scavenged pallets from behind the old stage door furniture. They were like, yeah, take what you want, and we put hardware cloth on the inside, and it was hard not to do it, and it was hard to let the boys really take the role in that, but they did a really nice job with that, and it still stands. That's their first load of scraps collected from dinner, mixed with dried leaves. Big top hockey player who's like, I'm not touching that stuff. But he also had the line that I'll never forget, and we talked a lot about composting. I said, he's like, so you mean these salad greens will become soil? And I was like, yeah, that's exactly what I mean. So that was my line, it's from salad greens to soil. So we're trying to get the kids to collect and save their scraps after dinner, which Michelle will talk about in a minute. And then ultimately, it becomes that. So that was my first batch of compost last year, complete with a lovely, gorgeous red worm right there. And I was so psyched to bring Max back. I'm like, Max, salad greens to soil. He's like, whoa. He thought that was pretty good. That was last fall, not this fall, but the fall before. Their boys are making a sheet mulch bed. This is a class that just came down, that was the environmental class, and I said, yeah, come on down. I met him during the class period and taught him how to make a sheet mulch bed. This was a couple of years ago when we tapped all the maple trees along the front driveway. Which was great. It was on the last 10 days of winter term. The sap was flowing beautifully. We didn't make the syrup itself. We then donated our sap to another farm nearby, who then figured out how much sap we'd given him, and then in turn he gave us some syrup back. It was cool for the kids to have this experience of tapping trees and collecting it. We also have a bunch of bee boxes down there, courtesy of Mark Burkhold oversaw this originally, and we had a student as an Eagle project. He made bee boxes, and then he donated them back to the school. So these are some boys who were in there checking out the frames, and Culinart, actually, no, I'm looking at, that's right, Culinart nicely donated the bee suits to us. So it's a lot easier to have kids work with bees when they're in bee suits. Legal issues, not so bad. That's another environmental class down there, going in and taste testing, and they were pretty psyched about greens. I love the contrast of like the blazers and the gardens, but a couple of years ago we did mushroom logs where we drilled holes and put in inoculated spores, and again it was a good hands-on outdoor activity. Unfortunately that was the drought summer and the mushrooms never came to be, but it was a cool experience and we can try again. There's Mark Barone and Arch really getting into it too. You drill the holes, you put in the mushroom spores, and then you seal it up with wax. And as I say, none of this could really be possible without the support of this guy, Mark Barone, who is just Mark Barone and Jeff Powell. They're my heroes because Culinart does help fund this program, and they're incredible. And then whatever we grow, Mark is like, he's happy to take and make a nice, really promotes what we do. So he and Jeff, I mean, it's incredible. I talked to other people who try to run gardens in their schools, and They're like, oh, it's great, but we can't put that in the dining hall. But whereas these guys are like, bring it on. So that is sort of the end of some of my visual pictures. Questions?